That you all are here to join us. I'm Senator John Morgan, and it is my honor to represent this beautiful town in the state Senate, and it's my first time up there. I am having a blast. Thank you all for your support. Thank you for sending me up there. Now, Senator Warren asked me to just share a couple of words with you about why I decided to get into fighting. This was not a hard question for me to answer. Just like so many of you, I'm angry. I am angry. And I've had enough. I've had enough of the celebration of ignorance. I've had enough. I have had enough of the bigotry. Of turning a blind eye to the science that is damning the next generation of Americans, one of which I'm holding in my arms right now. I've had enough, and I know that all of you have too. That's why it is so exciting for me to know that we are in the process of picking the next president of the United States. It is such a privilege to be a part of this state. I remember when I was in junior high and I started to get involved in the political process, having a chance to ask the tough questions to the candidates who came to our great state. And that's what you're all going to be doing here tonight. I'm thrilled that you're here to do that. And I am also deeply, deeply honored to be hosting and welcoming someone to our city, to our town, who goes down to Washington and fights on behalf of the hard-working women, men of this great nation of ours every single day. She stands up for the rights of children. She stands up for the LGBTQ community, and she stands up for our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, please offer a very, very warm welcome to Senator Elizabeth Warren.
So I brought my two guys with me, Bruce and Bailey. So Bailey will be available later with his own photo line. He's here to watch all that's going on. I thought what we do tonight is first, I want to start by saying thank you to John and William. I love having two introducers. I thought what we do is I talk a little bit, and then we'll take as many questions as we can. And truly, if anybody wants a picture, I will stay as long as you want, and we'll do a picture. So, anybody who wants to do it, that's the fun part. And I'm serious, Bailey will have his own photo line. It is not a competition. I can't quite be sure about how competition would work out. So anyway, let me start by saying how much I appreciate that on Friday night, when you could be doing a lot of things, that you came here. Our country is at a very dangerous moment. And the direction we take in 2020 is going to set our course for generations to come. And that's going to happen right through the center of New Hampshire. So thank you for putting your time and energy and thought into this. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. So I'll tell you a little about myself. I grew up out in Oklahoma. Nobody knows that. I usually wait just in case. I am the youngest. I have 3 much older brothers. I was what used to be referred to as the late in life baby. My mother always just called me the surprise. I was about 30 before it hit me what that meant. But I have 3 older brothers. They all went off and joined the military. My oldest brother, Don Reed, he was career military. He spent a little over 5 years off and on in combat in Vietnam. We were very lucky to get him back home. My brother John was stationed overseas for over a year. My brother David trained as a combat medic. Now, all 3 of my brothers are now retired. They're all back in Oklahoma. And I just want to warn you, if you ever go to Oklahoma and you're ever anywhere near my brother David, do not choke. David carries around a pocket knife because he is convinced that he could perform a tracheotomy on a choking person. I gotta tell you, Thanksgiving, anybody goes, we all just back out of the room. David's ready to go. When we were growing up, the boys and I, our daddy sold a lot of different stuff. He sold carpeting, he sold fencing, he sold housewares at different times, he sold paint. And then when I was in middle school, my brothers were all gone. And my daddy had a really serious heart attack. And we thought he was going to die. Folks from the church brought covered dishes. But he pulled through. But he couldn't go to work for a long time. And so we lost our family station wagon. And at night, my mom would tuck me into bed, and then I'd hear him talk. And that's when I learned words like mortgage and foreclosure. And one morning I got up and I go into my parents' bedroom, and there's my mother. She's got her slip on and her stocking feet, and out on the bed is the dress. Some of you may know the dress. It's the one that only comes out for weddings, funerals, and graduations. And my mother is crying. And she's pacing back and forth. And she's saying, we will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. We will not lose this house. She was 50 years old. She had never worked outside the home. And she was terrified. And finally, she wrestled that dress on, she put on her high heels, she blew her nose, and she walked to the Sears, where she got a minimum wage job that saved our house. And truly, it saved our family. And I tell that story because more than anything else, I think you have a right to know who I am. And that story is who I am. So there it is. For a long time, I thought that was a story just about my mother. And it was a story about somebody who was scared. But you're scared, something has to be done, you just reach down and find what you need to find, pull it up, and make it happen. And then years later I came to understand, no, it's a story about millions of families who, when it has to be done, it doesn't matter if you're scared. You reach down, you do what has to be done, you pull it up for those to take care of those you love. And then, years after that, I came to understand it is also a story about government. Because when my mama walked to the Sears, a minimum wage full-time job in America would support a family of 3. It would pay a mortgage, the utilities, and put food on the table. Today, a minimum wage job, full-time in America, will not keep a mama and a baby out of poverty. That is wrong, and that is why I am in this And why is that so? It's not an accident. The reason is because when I was a girl, the question asked in Washington is, what will it take a family of 3 to survive? And that's where they put the minimum wage. Today, the question asked in Washington is, what will improve the profitability of a giant multinational corporation? Well, I want a government that works less for giant multinational corporations and more for little families like ours. Life goes on. I had a dream as a kid. I've had this dream since I was in 2nd grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. Can we hear it for our public school? I just want you all to know, I used to line my dolls up and teach them. I was tough but fair. I don't think you did your homework last night. It was, I kind of had to stay after, but they were good. They were good dolls. By the time I graduated from college, there was no money even for an application to college, much less to send me to school. And I have a very twisty path. I got a scholarship. It looks like I'm all set up. Then I fell in love. Dropped out of school, got married. Thought I'd given the whole dream up, found a commuter college, go back to school, and I actually got to live my dream. I was a public school teacher working with special needs kids. I loved that job, and I would still be doing it, but in those days, I hit a little snag. By the time I hit the end of the first year, I was rather visibly pregnant, and in those days, they just didn't invite you back. So I'm home, I got a baby, and I made this crazy decision to head off to law school, baby on the hip, graduate law school, visibly pregnant again. You will notice a pattern to this. But I ended up back in teaching pretty fast. I trade little tiny ones for great big ones in law school. And I've spent pretty much my whole career centered around one question. I've taught the math and the finance courses and the econ courses, taught in the law schools, and my question has always been, what's happening to working families in America? Why is America's middle class being hollowed out? Why is it that people who work every bit as hard as my mother worked today find the path so much rockier and so much steeper? And for people of color, the path is even rockier and even steeper. And here's the answer. It isn't an accident. Washington works great for giant drug companies. It just doesn't work for people who are trying to get a prescription filled. Think about that, right? Washington works great for giant oil companies that want to drill everywhere. It just doesn't work for people who see climate change bearing down upon us. Washington works great for payday lenders. It just doesn't work for families trying to live paycheck to paycheck. And when we have a government that works for the rich and powerful and not for anyone else, we need to call that out for what it is. Corruption, pure and simple. Corruption that touches every family in this country. Think about the fact Now, that for decades, wages have been flat, but the cost of housing, even adjusted for inflation, up 2/3. Your health insurance, more than doubled. Sending a kid to college, more than triple. And child care goes up 700%. Think about what that means. This means the squeeze on families is real. And let me add one more part to this. Race matters. Just pick one part of this. Generation after generation of systematic discrimination means that today, here in America, for every $100 that the median white family owns $5. Yeah, think about that. In America, we have a problem. And our problem is that we have a government that just keeps working better and better and better for those at the top, raking wealth off everyone else, and now is our time to fight back. That's what it is. So I want to talk about fighting back. We're not going to be able to do this with a little, let's have a couple of amendments over here, let's add one statute over there, let's nibble around the edges, let's make a little adjustment. We need big systemic change in this country. And I don't come to New Hampshire to talk about big systemic change unless I've got some ideas. So, let me hit you with three of them, actually. First one, we need to change the rules in Washington. And what I mean by that is we need to attack the corruption head on. That's the only way we're going to make a change in this. So how do you do that? Well, I've got the biggest anti-corruption proposal since Watergate. All I can say is, big problem takes big solution. So there's a lot of pieces to this, but I'll give you some of the flavors. First one, end lobbying as we know it. Second one, stop the revolving door between Wall Street and Washington. Make the Supreme Court follow basic rules of ethics. I just do one more. Every single person who runs for federal office should have to put their tax returns online. So, change the rules in Washington, attack the corruption, the influence of money head on. Part two, change the rules in our economy. Think how this economy works right now. Giant multinational corporations, they basically just run over anybody they want to run over. They run over their own workers, they run over their own customers, they run over the communities they're located in. And the only way you make systemic change is you've got to get some power on the other side in the system. And for me, that means we got to make it easier to join a union and give unions more power. Unions built America's middle class. Unions will rebuild. Change. Let me do another one for you. And let me start with the ultra-millionaire's wealth tax. Okay, this is a tax that I've proposed on the 75,000 richest families in America. It basically says if you have built a great fortune in this country, $50 million and above, you got to pay a 2% tax each year on the wealth above 50 million. I want you all to relax. You get to keep your first 50 million tax free. Saw a couple of people say, oh. 2% a year on the amount above that. Now, let me just start out by saying, a couple of billionaires say, whoa, that's un-American. Excuse me, anybody here own a home? You've been paying a wealth tax every year. They just call it a property tax, right? What I want to do is for the folks with the really giant fortunes, I just want to include the Rembrandt and the diamonds and the wealth tax. That's what it is. Here's the deal. 2% every year. Pitch it back at the kitty. What can we do with 2%? I'll just give you one idea. We can pay for universal child care for every one of our babies, 0 to 5, universal pre-K, universal pre-pre-K, high quality, pay our child care workers. We could do that for every child in America and still have $2 trillion left over. That works not just for those at the top, but works for everyone else. Think about what is possible. We could deal with the student loan debt burden out of that extra. We could do a serious down payment on a Green New Deal out of that. Invest in a way that helps us build a future. Not just for those who are born into privilege, but helps us build a future for all of us. So that's 1 and 2. First one, change the rules in Washington. Second one, change the rules in the economy. Third one, change the rules in politics. And what that means, hold on, is protect our democracy. I have a constitutional amendment to protect the right to vote for every American citizen and make sure it's a federal law to roll back every damn one of these voter suppression laws around the Overturn Citizens United. So there it is. Just 3 things. Change the rules in Washington, change the rules in our economy, and change the rules in politics to protect our democracy. We can do those 3 things. Now, I stand here tonight out of gratitude. Never in a million years did I think I'd be on a stage like this, doing what I'm doing. But here's the deal. My daddy, he ended up as a janitor. His little girl got a chance to be a public school teacher, to be a college professor, to be a United States senator, and to be a candidate for President of the United States. I believe in opportunity all the way to my core, and I make the commitment that I will fight for opportunity, not just for those at the top, but for everybody in this country. This is our chance to dream big, to fight hard, and to win and make change. Questions? Who's running the questions? It's okay, Joe. Okay. William wants to draw.
It's bedtime for William. So we have a couple of microphones on each side, and I'm going to pick 3 numbers. I'm going to say the 3 numbers, and then if you could yell "persist," so we know that you're here.
I like that. Okay.
That'll be great.
Or bingo, whichever comes first. Okay, give us some good numbers.
First number, 024.
Perfect. Come on down.
Come on down to a microphone, and I'm going to pick two more.
Somebody will find you. Okay. That's two habits. Okay.
047. This doesn't have to do with it.
It does. 047. Do we have a winner? Oh, we got a winner down here. Come on down. Okay, that's 2.
076.
I'm good. How about you?
That wasn't my comment.
I'm in the fight. Me too. Tell me your name.
Laura.
Hi, Laura.
I actually kind of cheated. I came up here from Massachusetts.
That's okay. It is not cheating. I was in the spirit of the moment. So did I. Right, okay.
I work in the mental health field. I'm a proud social worker. And one of the hardest things I think about my job is just seeing how much the mental health system fails.
Yes.
All healthcare is unequal by how much people make, but I feel like the mental health system, the disparities are seen even more. And I'm just curious, with Medicare for All, how that could improve mental health care.
Good. Okay, it's a great question, Laura. Let's just start, whenever we talk about healthcare, with a statement of our values. And that is, healthcare is a basic human right, and we fight for basic human rights. I support Medicare for all. I'm in. Count on me. But I want to talk just a little bit more. Let's do a little bit of fill-in, if we can. First part around healthcare, because I know we got a lot of people in this room who are very concerned about healthcare. Mental health needs to be treated the same way physical health care does. And what really gets to me is that actually is the law. That has been the law now for nearly 20 years, is that right? For a long time now. It's called the Mental Health Parity Act. But I'm sorry, I just want to point out, somebody has an addiction problem, someone has other mental health issues. A health insurance company will say, 4 treatments, you're done. 8 treatments, and this is if you have insurance. 8 treatments, you're done. They don't say that for a broken leg. You know, we'll see in 3 months. They don't say that for cancer. 4 treatments, and I'm sorry, I hope it worked. But if it didn't, you're on your own now. We need mental health parity that is real. And that means we need to put real teeth into the enforcement of the parity laws. So that's where I start this. One more thing. For everyone in this room, we're talking a lot about Medicare for All, and I'm glad to talk about it. But we got to take a deep breath and remember where we are right now. And that is the Republicans are working as hard as they can to take away the health care coverage that we've got. So they've got the lawsuit pending down in Texas that would repeal the Affordable Care Act. Anybody with a pre-existing condition in here? Yeah, you should care about that lawsuit. The Trump budget just released this week also repeals it. There we go. Also cuts Medicare, Medicaid. Think about what that means in America. So job number 1 is to defend what we have. Job number 2, let's pick some of the low-hanging fruit. Reduce the cost of prescription drugs. Redesign the healthcare system to make that part happen. There are 3 quick ways we can do it. One is we could simply have Medicare negotiate drug prices. That would get us in a good place. Let's start. Secondly, we ought to be able to import drugs from Canada. If it meets the same safety standards, how is it that we pay for health, the investment in the research, and then the drug companies end up in some cases charging us 10 times what they're charging in Canada? We need to be able to import drugs as long as the safety standards are met. That would bring down some prices. And one more, and I'll just mention briefly, I have a big proposal around generic drugs. We all remember how it was supposed to work, 6 years under patent, and then it was all going to turn loose and the drugs would get really cheap. Let me just tell you, generics could fill 90% of all prescriptions. The problem is, About 40% of generic drugs right now have either 0 or 1 manufacturer. That means it's not happening. The drug companies have figured out how to game the system, keep the generics out of your reach, and as a result, keep their profits up. So I've got a proposal that says when that happens, the government can just do a cost-plus contract and make generic drugs available to anybody, basically at cost-plus. Anybody in here know someone with diabetes? That's insulin that we're talking about, EpiPens, high blood pressure medicine, high cholesterol medicine, pain medicine, all of this. We could bring down those costs. And then we get to the third part, and that is Medicare for all. What we're looking for in Medicare for all is everybody gets covered with high quality care at the lowest possible cost. It's not a hard concept. What's the runway going to look like to get us there? And there are a lot of different proposals on the table. So for example, one of the proposals is we start bringing down the age for Medicare coverage. So it goes from 65 to 60 to 55, and you just keep bringing it down. Helps a lot of folks, especially who need the coverage. One way to do it. Second way to do it is you start at the other end. You cover everybody 0 to 30 with Medicare, because they're actually fairly cheap to cover, right? Because mostly they're healthy, and that works pretty well. Others say, another way we could do this is let employers buy in. So they say they don't want to mess around in the private insurance market, that's fine. Just get Medicare coverage for all of your employees. Another one is to let employees be able to buy in. But the point is, get us there. Get us to the point where everybody has coverage that is as good as Medicare or better. We are aiming, in some cases, for better than the Medicare coverage now. Get us there. Everybody gets covered at the lowest possible price. So, that's the idea behind all of this. I should try to keep my answer short, but there's one more thing I want to say, because I think it's important. We don't make enough of a case for Medicaid. Yeah. And particularly when we're talking about mental health issues, and when we're talking about addiction issues, when we're talking about opioids, understand where we stand right now with Medicaid. It's easy to think Medicaid is somebody else. 2 out of every 3 seniors in a nursing home is counting on Medicaid to help pay the bills. People who have addiction problems, about 2 out of 3 are counting on Medicaid to be able to pay the bills. Your neighbor who has the home health aide, who drops by and that's how she's able to stay in her home, it's more likely than not that Medicaid is paying those bills. And your cousin who had the baby that ran up $1 million in medical bills in the first 3 weeks, even if the parents have private insurance, it's Medicaid that steps in and helps with the speech therapist and the occupational therapist and the special feeding equipment and the special breathing equipment. This is how we have to think about Medicaid. We don't know whose grandma is going to outlive her savings. We don't know whose beloved brother is going to fall subject to an addiction. We don't know whose cousin is going to have the baby that runs up millions of dollars in medical care. But what we do know is that we're all going to pitch a little into the pot. So if it happens to you and your family, the rest of America will be there for you. That is the best Tell me your name. Pat. Pat. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. Okay. For the past few years, we have been hearing about the rich have this and the corporations have that, and the middle income and the low income people, are squeezed out of their share of the pie. So we've talked about it, we've talked about some solutions, but I don't see anything changing.
Yes.
So what would you suggest? We have a Republican Party that is devoted to Trump, and we have Senator Mitch McConnell, who will... How do you get these old guys to retire?
Okay, it's a great question, and the answer is vote for me. No, I do, because that's what I believe 2020 is going to be about. If we make the credible case, one, that we understand what's broken, two, that we've got a real plan to fix it, and three, that we will build the grassroots army to make it happen, then we not only will be able to take back the White House in 2020 and win up and down the ballot, we will be able to make the change we need to make come January 2021. Too many people have heard empty promises because everybody wants to stand up for working people. And then they go to Washington and somehow they keep standing up for the drug companies, for the giant banks, for the payday lenders, for the oil companies. Well, all I can say is not me. That is not why I'm in this fight. I am in this fight for hard working That's why I'm here. All right. Okay.
Senator, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't just share with you
Yes.
that it's the people in this room.
Yes.
We have not had a Democratic state senator from this district for a very long time. But
Get to work.
it's the people in this room that sent me to Concord that allowed us to pass a bill out of the state Senate that's going to help us to get reduced cost drugs into the hands of people. And allow the insurance commissioner to ensure that mental health parity is being enforced.
Yeah.
These are critical issues, and thank you for speaking.
We need it all across the country.
Sure do.
Yep.
I'm going to pick two more numbers. If your number is called, just let us know you're here.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
we have one more, I know.
We're just going to get them moving.
We're getting prepped here. 081.
081.
We got one. All right.
Got one? Okay.
Last one. 064.
Well, there she is.
All right.
All right. Okay.
And now, after these folks ask their questions, we're going to ask you to line up on your right over here for those of you who want photos with the senator or with Bailey.
I think, where's Bailey going? Is he going to go out to the back? You're going to stand here and compete with me, baby. Baby's a good boy. Good boy. Yeah. You realize he's a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay.
Elizabeth, thank you very much for running.
Oh, thank you. That's a sweet. Tell me your name.
Peter,
Hi, Peter.
I think we all agree with your philosophies. We've seen you over the years, and we have agreed, I believe, most of us, with everything you said tonight. My concern, however, is the number of Democrats running, and that it's spread out. Hopefully, you will be able to work with some of your associates and impart some of your philosophies to them. And I think the other thing, tonight we have only heard one name of the person who was in the White House. Thank goodness.
Yes.
Since that person came down the escalator 2.5 years ago, we have heard from people, all of the media, his name about 1,000 times a day. And I hope that you and the rest of the Democrats cannot ever use his name again. He has used his platform, even with negatives, to get elected. And the public, unfortunately, too many of them, I guess isn't smart enough to realize that even negative comments keeps that name in front of them. And hopefully you can help get that across, and I hope you can get some of your associates to go along with some of your programs and present them to the Democrats as well, so that we can get elected to that office in 2020.
So thank you,
Thank
Peter.
you.
Thank you. I do want to say about Peter's point, because this is how I see this. Our job is to make clear to all of America what our vision is. It's not just to say, not him, okay? Not that. It's to actually say, we can do this. We can make change. We can not just talk about it and wave our hands. We actually can deliver on this. Go back to my wealth tax. Let's just play the game for a minute here. 2% on the great fortunes. And by the way, I also, I should rename the dang thing the fairness tax. Because here's the deal. That's the top 1/10 of 1%. This year, do you know how much they'll pay of their total wealth in taxes? It's about 3.4% total, all in, everything they'll pay. The 99.9% will pay about 7.4% of their wealth in taxes. I'm tired of freeloading billionaires. You built a great fortune. You got out, you had some great idea, you worked hard and it built this great. Good for you. Yay! But you employed workers that all of us helped pay to educate. You used roads and bridges that all of us helped pay to build. You were protected by firefighters and police officers that all of us paid to help keep on the job. And all we're asking is when you hit it big, put a little back in the kitty so other kids will have a chance. That's all it is. Now, the reason I talk about this in response to Peter's question is this. When I talk about the wealth tax, Democrats love it. Independents love it. And a majority of Republicans love it. Think about that. We want to talk about how we're going to make this happen. It's our vision of just what's fair. It's our vision of who we want to be as a people who invest in our kids, in our future, and not just the kids born into privilege, but to all of our kids. We get out there, we make that case, we fight hard, we win. That's how
Hi, thank you for coming out. I find you a very...
Tell me your name.
Okay, sorry, Dan McGraw.
Hi, Dan.
I'm from Exeter.
Okay, good to see
Thank
you,
you for
Dan.
coming out. I find you a very likable person.
Oh, did that surprise you?
It's an important quality.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good.
I think you
I'm
have
feeling better, okay.
I think you have a good heart. It seems like your heart's in the right place.
Yeah?
My question is, you were talking about inflation. How
Yeah.
we can buy much less with what we have now. you're talking about the minimum wage and what it could do before. I have a slightly different analysis of inflation, and that has to do with monetary policy.
Okay.
So my understanding, there's been an ongoing debate in the United States about central banks. Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, Nicholas Biddle, Andrew Jackson, Wilson, Charles E. American, right? So it's an ongoing thing. My sense is that the value of the dollar has decreased by at least 95% since 1913 when we got a central bank.
Okay.
So the central bank has been necessarily inflationary, right? The second part of it is that we went off of the gold standard in 1969 and we went on the oil standard in 1974. We created the petrodollar. That petrodollar drives these wars. You know, we go into all these countries and we take their oil. If we have a monopoly on the oil, that gives a monopoly to the US dollar, right? Which is printed by the Federal Reserve, which is privately owned by banks that aren't even from the United States, right? The banks that own the Federal Reserve are from Europe, some of them.
Okay.
So, what's your analysis of monetary policy and how would you address monetary policy to create a sound currency that would give real value to the dollar?
So, I gotta say, I'm not sure we're in the same boat on this one. Remember that inflation, some inflation built into the system, for example, helps debtors over time. And that a dollar that is pegged to a gold standard keeps us from being able to put, for example, money in during recessions. And I'm Keynesian on this. I actually believe we should be spending money in recessions. We should be printing money in recessions. Now, what I don't believe is where we've ended up over the last, 20 years? And that is to engage in 2 wars and basically decide to just put them on the credit card for our grandchildren to pay for. That was wrong. To decide to change Medicare, and I'm all in favor of expanding prescription drug benefits, but I'm all in favor of doing it when you pay for it and not leave it to our grandchildren to do that. And then to turn around now in the Trump administration and give away $1.5 trillion basically to billionaires, millionaires, and giant corporations. We have put ourselves in a huge debt hole. And it's gotten worse because, as you rightly point out, interest rates are now starting to go up, which means not only will our grandchildren be responsible for paying off the debt, our grandchildren and us are going to be responsible for paying the interest on all of that debt, which is starting to snowball. So this is, for me, I know you approach this from monetary policy. I actually approach this, I'm just going to do it the other end. I approach this from fairness in our tax system. When billionaires, as Warren Buffett said, when he's paying a lower tax rate than his secretary, something is broken in America. And we have to that's where I start this. And then the second part, because I want to throw this one in too, because we also need to rethink how we do government accounting. So right now, if we went out and spent, as a country, we said, you know, we need a new building right here in Exeter, and here's why, and we need a federal building for something. And we spent, let's just say, we spent $10 million to build that building. If we were a private corporation, we say, okay, you used to have $10 million in cash, now you have a building worth $10 million. Your net worth is still $10 million, right, plus whatever else you've got. Only in the federal government do you actually buy assets and treat them as if they were current expenses, as if we'd taken that money out and burned it. That makes no sense at all. And what it's done is it's put us into a line of thought that's down the rabbit hole of everything is an expense, rather than looking at the things that are investments. You know, we spend money on roads and bridges, we spend money on new power grid, we spend money. I'm just going to make one pitch on this. We need to upgrade our infrastructure across this country. You want to have jobs in America in 10 years, good jobs in America in 10 years, you can't do it on a 1980s infrastructure. We need a 21st century infrastructure. China gets this. Right now, the United States is spending about 0.5% of our GDP on infrastructure. It's crumbling around our ears. We're not even replacing what's broken. China is spending more than 5 times that much. They are building an economic future for themselves, for their businesses, and for their workers. We need to reorient toward where can we spend our money to create opportunities for our kids, to create opportunities for all of our people. So I think that's where we got to take this. I hope that's one more question? Thank you. All righty. Okay. You gonna do monetary policy again? Okay. He got it covered for you. Good. Okay. Tell me your name.
My name's Cassie.
Cassie? It's good to see you, Cassie.
I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay.
But my parents live here in Exeter.
Okay, good. Okay.
My biggest question is, I mean, every night I watch the TV and I listen to that person
I hear you.
live for the 9,782nd time.
Yeah.
And I have to do everything I can to not throw my shoe at the TV. And I'm wondering, everybody says, oh, take the high road, he's down here, take the high road, he's down here. And I'm like, I'm not feeling where the Democrats as a whole are really addressing the fact that there's so much false crap coming out of there. And what are you going to do about that? How do you approach that when somebody just keeps lying all the time about everything? They don't even know what the truth is, I don't think.
Okay. So this is a tough question. You know, we built a democracy on an assumption that people were going to get to vote, right? Not everybody, but we got it mostly in that direction. We built it on the assumption we were going to have an independent judiciary, and we built it on the assumption we were going to have a free press. And that meant a press to hold politicians accountable. And kind of the unspoken part of that was, most of them at least would tell the truth, most of the press, most of the time, and try to hold politicians' feet to the fire. And we've lost a huge piece of that. So how are we going to recover? What do you do if you're not starting from the same kind of, I get the old, we can argue about our opinions, but we shouldn't be arguing about facts, right? What the facts are. Look at climate. We didn't get to talk much about climate tonight. I didn't get any questions about, well, let me just say on climate, I want to say something powerfully controversial in Washington. I believe in science. It's man-made, the catastrophe is coming our way, we are running out of runway, and we better start making changes fast. We could have policy differences about the best way to do that, like, I kind of think we should stop subsidizing oil companies. Infrastructure, we need to put a lot of it into green infrastructure. I think that's but it's a hard conversation to have if we don't start with the same set of facts. And you know what? By the way, the Republicans have figured this out. Understand, this business about not telling the truth, it did not start with the he who shall not be named. It didn't. Okay, he may have taken it to an art form. But understand, there was a time, 20 years ago, when Republicans and Democrats were looking around saying, whoa, the numbers are not looking good here. What's happening? What's happening to CO2 levels? What's happening to heat on our Earth? Starting to look into what's happening in our oceans, right? And then along come the Koch brothers and a few others who make their money in carbon-based fuels, who basically start putting out fake scientific reports. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about Washington being corrupt. They put out enough reports from bought and paid for experts, hire enough lobbyists to pass those around in all of the Senate offices and congressional offices, hire enough PR firms to get people out, get them all fluffed up and get them out on the news shows to talk, to be the other side of science, and make plenty of contributions to politicians, and all of a sudden, we have a whole political party saying, well, I don't know about that thing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I saw a snowball, it must be that there's no I'm serious. So, that describes the problem. What are we going to do about the problem? That's why I'm here. What we're going to do about it is what we're going to do together. The days when we can count on, 3 news channels and Walter Cronkite saying, that's how it is, they're gone. And they're not coming back. Not in the next few days, not in the next few months. So what do we know about news, about facts, about communication? And the answer is, what works best is face-to-face, friend to friend, neighbor to neighbor, family to family. It means we got to rebuild this from the grassroots up. In fact, whether you meant to or not, you went right to the heart of what my whole campaign is about. It's about how we think about change. And what it's going to take now, not what it would have taken 20 years ago to make change, which we didn't make, what it's going to take now. And it's why I'm with you. And you in New Hampshire are going to make a big part of this decision. So if you think that the way we're going to be able to pull this off as Democrats is for your presidential candidates to go spend a lot of time behind closed doors with a bunch of millionaires and scoop up a bunch of money and then run a bunch of TV ads, both in the primary and then in the general, and that's going to be the way we're going to win this. Understand, we're going to be up against people who not only are able to do the same thing, they're probably able to do it with more money than we can, and they have their own bought and paid for television channel to keep making that happen. We better have another way to make it happen. And that's the specialness of what we can do now, of the opportunity we have at this moment to do this from the ground up. I'm not out doing this with millionaires. I'm spending the time here with you and with people all around this country. And let me just say, I get it. I'm leaving a whole lot of money on the table by doing that. But for me, it's an investment in democracy and in making democracy work. It is an investment in truth. It is an investment in how we build a future. If you believe in that, be part of it. Go to Elizabeth. Questions, I appreciate it's a good question, but that's how we're going to have to do this. Let me just say, to wrap this up, I get that what I want to do is big. It is big and it's structural. I do. We've got to address the corruption in Washington head on. We have got to change the rules in this economy. We have got to change the rules to protect our democracy. These are big, hard changes. But my view on this is, you don't get what you don't fight for. And that's why I'm here. Think back. We're here in New Hampshire. Think back. Think of your history. The abolitionists. How many people told them, it's just too hard to make change. Why don't you give up now? The suffragettes. It's just too hard. Give up now. The early union organizers. just too hard, give up now. The foot soldiers in the civil rights movement, it's just too hard, give up now. The early gay rights activists just a few years ago at wanting equal marriage, what were they told? Just too hard, give up now. But they didn't. They organized, they built a movement, and they changed the course of history in this country.